Yep, looks good. All right. So first of all, welcome everyone to another edition of our weekly community call where the Santiment team and community members basically gather around and we talk about the market. We do it from a fundamental perspective, by which I mean we don't really only look at price-related data, technical analysis. We kind of grow beyond that and discuss various different sources of information on these coins. This includes their on-chain or network activity, their social media data and activity, and even their development activity or the development activity of their teams. So today's topic is going to be, by the way, for those of you that are not really familiar with Santiment all that much, I definitely strongly suggest if you like anything that you hear or see during today's video to check out santiment.net. The link is going to be in the description of this video. All of the metrics that we are kind of going to talk about today can be accessed through a 14-day trial when you create an account on Sandbase. There's no credit card needed or anything like that. So definitely take a look at santiment.net. If this is your first time here, and if you're not on our Discord already, definitely join that as well. There's a link to our Discord channel in the description of this video. If you don't want to wait until next Friday to talk about DeFi or any specific project that you're interested in, it's much better to just join our Discord channels where we talk about this stuff on a daily basis rather than waiting for another week. So the links to both santiment.net and our Discord channel are in the description of this video. Click on that and join our community. Okay, so the topic of the day is going to be decentralized finance and the coins powering different decentralized finance solutions. So first of all, let's talk about the general market trends that we have seen in the past couple of days. We've created this watch list that has around what is it? Maybe 27 different coins that are related to various DeFi solutions. And you can do this on Sandbase for any sort of category of coins that you're interested in monitoring and tracking over time. You can create a watch list for each of them, and then you will get a variety of breakdowns like their market cap over a certain period of time. So let's see these 27 coins in particular. Their market cap over the last week has been up by 36.86%. Their market cap in the last month has been over 100%. Now let's compare that to the general market, the entire crypto market, which we can do by looking at the all assets watch list, which basically looks at all of the coins in our database and their performance over time. So over those same two time spans, first of all, in the last 7 days, the entire crypto market has gone up by only 1%. Due to the fact that Bitcoin and Ethereum are just kind of not really doing much of anything. And in the last month, the general market cap of the crypto market has increased by a puny 1.5%. Now, once again, compare that to 105% in the last month. And what was it? Let's go back to the 7 day, 36.8% in the last week. Now, there's a number of sort of reasons why this might be, and we're going to talk about a few of them, and then we're going to talk about a few coins in particular. Obviously, we can't really go over all of these 27 different coins at a 30-minute video, but what we are going to focus on is a few coins that have been getting a lot of general community attention over the last couple of days and that have been pumping quite a lot, which is AAV or Lend, Ren, and KNC and Compound, as well as kind of a side notes. And we're going to talk about where they are at the moment, what their on-chain and social activity is showing, and then in general where they might be going next based on their historical on-chain and social data. So over the past few days and few weeks, we have been seeing a lot of very sort of bullish sentiment turning towards DeFi coins. Essentially, ever since Bitcoin kind of went into a prolonged consolidation period and the price action for all of the top cap coins became very lethargic, there's this growing narrative that people are kind of, moving their funds from Bitcoin and these top cap coins into DeFi related solutions and tokens, because that's the more and more the Bitcoin consolidation phase continues, it seems like the more bearish people are towards its midterm prospects. So there's quite a growing kind of consensus in the community that we're seeing a capital flight or an exodus of capital from top coins into a variety of DeFi related tokens. Now, just judging on the price action of the variety of DeFi tokens that we have seen in the past couple of weeks, this might very well be the case. But in general, we have been seeing this very positive and optimistic sort of narrative around DeFi tokens evolve over the last couple of weeks. For example, just a tweet that says, in 2017, ICOs aided in moving Ethereum beyond 100 billion market cap. And in this next cycle, it will be DeFi projects that are likely to push ETH to a 1 trillion market cap. So we have seen this time and time again, kind of the narrative that DeFi is going to be the next big use case for Ethereum, and this is what seems to be driving the price action for a lot of these coins. People commenting that DeFi is a less explosively bullish catalyst for Ethereum than ICOs are forgetting the fact that DeFi is an incrementally accretive and sustainable trend, while ICOs were not. So not only are DeFi going to be a bigger use case than ICOs, it's also more sustainable and more incrementally positive for the state of the network. And then we see a lot of different specific coins being pumped, or not necessarily pumped, just there are a lot of sort of bullish sentiment. For example, towards Lend. At current prices, Lend market cap is just 1/8 of comp, despite having better tokenomics and being fairly close in lending market size. I predict a repricing for the Lend token based on the new comps is coming. So in general, I think this is sort of the market consensus at the moment, is that DeFis are not only the future anymore, they're the present, and the DeFi tokens are likely going to have their own season if that season is not already upon us. So before we kind of jump into specific coins, Kelvin, I know you've kind of spent a lot of time on crypto social media over the past couple of days, looking at different DeFi-related projects. Do you want to chime in on anything interesting that you've been seeing in terms of crowd sentiment and what they feel about where this DeFi pump and DeFi season might go next? And if you want to share your screen, I'll stop presenting mine for a second.
Yeah, I think I will just share and just give a little bit of overview on the DeFi excitement that's going on right now. Just one moment. Just let me see whether everything's all good. Let me know when you guys can see my screen, yeah?
I can see it now.
Yeah, so I'm just going to use from DeFi Pulse this chart over here. You can see most of DeFi has been picking up quite well with over the past year. But with the Black Thursday meltdown and everything, things really went to crap. But it has since picked up already, and you can see this little crazy spike, right? This is actually the cause of Compound Finance distributing their governance tokens, and with that, you can actually start to do compound token mining by lending or borrowing from the platform itself, and the use from it is pretty insane. Just let me try to find where are the use. Okay, so there's this calculator that helps you to just predict how much you're going to earn from it. So over here, I just entered 10,000 for the USDT if you're lending $10,000 to it. And let me see what's the latest one. So you're getting actually a 58.63 net APY, and that's really, I think at this point in time, it's probably the highest yield you can get. Granted, that this use will fluctuate across as the days goes by, but so far for this past few days since Compound launch and their tokens is being traded right now, it's traded on I think Poloniex, and it's in 2 days time. I think it's going to be traded on Coinbase.
3 days, yeah, the 22nd.
Yes, yeah, it will be traded on Coinbase. So there's a lot of excitement going on there, and the price is just insane. Let me just quickly check how much is the price right now. So yeah, right now on Sandbase, it shows that at least the price is. Let me just refresh that. It's 205, and since launch, yeah, it launched at I think around $60 or around $60 or so, and it has skyrocketed many times already, and it's insane. This is mainly due to the supply. On the supply side, it's very little. If you look at the order books on Poloniex, it's only like I think few thousand comps available. But this mining is ongoing, so everybody's trying to get into this, and with the use like that, it's very hard to say no. And this, how you can get this use like this is not because it's the percentage of the USDT, the interest from the USDT, but rather it's the amount of comp that you earn from doing this comp mining. So what other people are doing is they're even going leverage on USDT just so they can earn more comps. People are swapping USDC to USDT, whatever they can, just to try to mine this. Everyone's trying to mine this, and that's why on the chart itself you can see a huge spike. And I think previously Compound wasn't even number 2, I think, but it has grown in one day. You can see the amount of assets being locked up, right? It's already up 41% already. We can even see large players like I think was this Nexo Finance, or Whale using Nexo Finance at least, have started to move like 22 million USDT into Compound Finance just to mine the comp token. So everyone's doing it.
One question of we always try to be contrarian to the crowd, not here.
Yep.
If we see so big excitement, okay, I don't think maybe it reached the top, but if we see so much excitement and so much mining of compound tokens, so we need to bear in mind, if even you earn in compound tokens 50% per year, we know how crypto works. You can lose 50% in 2 or 3 days in value. Yeah, so we need to mention it to our listeners. Yeah, it's a kind of game where high risk, high reward. Now, you really need to consider when you move your attention to it. You can do it now, or you should do it now. Attention, just to run a few things, but converting your other cryptos to compound. This is a tricky point. If it works as you say, you deposit stable coins and you earn on top of it compound. Yeah, you mine. That's a kind of okay. I think it's okay. Yeah, but we could also expect that the mining rate will now diminish greatly because there will be so much supply of USDT. Right, the markets and cryptos are super efficient. Like you cannot expect it to run for too long time, correct? I think you are the one who said enjoy it as long as it lasts. It will not be. It will not.
Yeah, definitely. And that's why you're so large. People are leveraging on
yes.
Mine as much as they can before it goes down. Even right now, the compound finance, the governance, the people right now, they have made some proposals as well, setting the USDT reserve factor to 20% and whatnot.
Okay.
So this should technically stop the craze over there and should reduce the amount of yield that you can earn. So then you'll be left to see how the market reacts to it, and the different people. So
can you one more last question? Can you sell your mined compound right away, or you need to keep it for some time?
No, you can sell it right away. It goes straight to your wallet. It goes to your account, then you can collect it. But here's the thing. Gas prices on Ethereum are too damn high. So there are some functions that you run that if you have very small amount and you're mining that token, your gas cost can be higher than your
profit.
Compound. So it makes it really silly. So it's good enough for big players. So it's only worthwhile for kind of big players that it's definitely worthwhile for big players to do that. But that's I'm using Compound as an example on the DeFi craze because Compounds spark the fire right now, and everyone's looking on this this movement. And I think the best way to sum it up is we are seeing yield hunters slowly start to surface up more. It has been happening for since the start of the year or even last year, but it's not until now that we see people are really seeking out such things. Why so as well is because recently, I think Curve.fi have started to introduce the bottom here, somewhere over here. Ren BTC has launched a mainnet and have started to bring in BTC onto Ethereum after other alternatives out there that kind of failed. I think Keep Network was one of them, TBTC, which launched for 2 days and then just didn't really work. So right now, at this point in time, it seems that Ren BTC is the only one that is capable to do to bring BTC onto Ethereum in a trustless manner. So with this, they have partnered with like Curve to have a pool there. And right now, if you're putting your BTC onto Ethereum, you're looking at an APY of 20%, and that is unseen of and unheard of. When you look at the centralized alternatives like say BlockFi.com, they are giving, I think, up to a max of 6%. So granted that there's smart contract risks, people that are already in crypto and are willing to take those risks can benefit from this. And just I think today or yesterday, Synthetics also partnered with Ren to launch SUSD part. Sorry, not this. There's another one. Wait, I think it's not showing here, but there's another one that they have. I think, yeah, kind of. For some reason it's not showing up here, but anyways, they have this other pool, right, that consists of mining other similar. Oh, there you go, SBTC. Yes, right now it's at 22%. So with this, if you send BTC to here and supply as a liquidity provider, you are actually earning Curve tokens, balance tokens as well, synthetic tokens on top of the yield that you're getting for your BTC. So this mining thing is everyone is just looking into it, and naturally Ren's prices will start to rise up. So yeah, right now we are seeing a lot of people just flooding into this DeFi movement, and all the projects around the same category or anyone is providing such services or being able to lock value up, we are seeing increased growth on it. So like Aave, Synthetics, Compound, Maker is quite chilling right now. It's not really doing much. Maybe it has extended its growth, but any of those projects that are actually under it, right? Like they were below like 100 million market cap, have all seen to start to rise really. And with Compound right now, I think Compound is valued at around 2 billion. And people, it's starting to suggest to people, like, let me see here. Yeah, I think this will be a good example. But I think, yeah, this is an old picture. The value of Compound has been growing exponentially. So anyways, yeah, people are starting to match, like say maybe with these guys all in front being valued at such a huge value, and the token value lock being that high as well. People are starting to try to match it. Hey, maybe this is undervalued compared to this. Likewise, one can say, hey, maybe this is overvalued compared to this. But since Compound is like the leader right now, everyone's matching towards that direction, and it seems that every other coin is trying to grow in that certain direction until it fails. So it will be worthwhile to see what happens when eventually more supply enters the circulation, and when Coinbase start listing it, and then when people really start trading Compound to see how it affects the entire so-called DeFi market itself. So hopefully that gives a little bit of overview on what's going on.
Hey,
Sure
Kelvin.
does.
Yes.
Thanks for the awesome synopsis. This is really helpful for not only viewers, but myself, as I've been trying to learn more about how Compound works logistically. One thing you mentioned was the risk involved, because I know a lot of people look at Compound as just this all upside, very little downside type of thing where you put in your tokens, whether it be stable coins or Ren or Bitcoin, and you're actually compounding them over time. But with everything in crypto, there's always a bit of a downside. And what I'm curious about, and I know our viewers would be curious about, is what type of risk there is, what those actual scenarios would look like, and how would be to occur. If you have any insight on that, I would love to know. And sorry if I'm putting you on the spot on this. Kelvin, you may be on mute. I don't know if you're talking.
Sorry, I ran away actually. Nah, I'm just kidding. Nah, I was just looking at my mute button as always. So I'm trying to find it with too many tabs open. Yeah, definitely. There's definitely smart contract risk. Nothing's really 100%. Granted that audits are done on Compound and all that stuff, and one can say like, hey, if these guys trust, and these are big players that trust Compound so much, maybe it should work. But the code is open source, right? So anyone can verify it right now. I think they open source most of their stuff already, and they have given it to the community to decide. But nothing's really 100%, right? We won't know until something happens. With more value being locked in a certain smart contract, right? The incentive to hack it grows as well. So I don't know technically like what other attack vectors there might be, and I mean like it even on the user level, you might send stuff to the wrong place, or you might actually try to do leverage and borrowing way too much, and then you get liquidated on the end. So there are such risks involved as well besides the smart contract risk. Like I could give you an example recently in terms of like contract exploits. Unfortunately, it happened to, I think, Bangkok Network, and this is quite recent. So there's a critical bug that happened to the deployed versions of the Bangkok Network smart contract, and had led to lost user funds. And people can actually just maybe do a search on this and read more about it, and know that, hey, the DeFi space has upsides, but be very clear that things may not work. And when things don't work, there's not being in a decentralized manner, and with Compound now being decentralized, you can't exactly go to the team and say, hey, for some reason I lost $10,000 and you should give me back my $10,000, or how do I recover it, and expect to recover that $10,000. Everything is by code. If it messes up, too bad. There might be other initiatives by the community to try to stop certain transfers and whatnot, or even like, hey, track where the money is going. But that's as far as it goes. At the end of the day, you can just swap it somewhere or use a mixer, and then your money will still be gone. So yeah, bear that in mind. I can't go into the technical factors because I'm not that technical, but I think anyone else on the call, or even the audience who is more technically inclined, can probably chime in if they want to.
Yeah, that sums it up well, Kelvin. I think that gives a nice synopsis of exactly what the risk is involved with Compound. And as I generally understand it, liquidity pool risks are one of the main ones. If there's a hack and something goes wrong, you have to remember that this is a decentralized asset, which isn't really protected by any sort of team. It's kind of a wild, wild west type of traded asset that can be compromised at any time. So that's how I understand it as well. And maybe if you want to share that link in chat here, in this Hangouts chat, I can share it on Twitter after the call so people can check out exactly what you were showing.
Yeah, keep in mind that a lot of these projects like Compound, like Aave protocol, they do have security audits. But if you read their security audit logs and fix logs at the end of those audits, where the security auditors or inspectors essentially suggest a bunch of changes to vulnerabilities that they found, and they say, okay, these vulnerabilities are high, these are medium, these are low, and then you'll see in the fix log the team has, usually what happens is the team fixes the kind of high vulnerabilities, but some of the medium and low ones, they will kind of put a label saying accepted risk or something like that. It's basically like saying, we can't really fix this. Sure, it's a potential vulnerability, but it's a risk that we kind of have to accept. There's currently no technical way to solve it. So as Calvin says, it works until it doesn't work, right? So, but that's not stopping a lot of people from making a lot of money from it at the moment. So, yeah, something to keep in mind. Okay, I think we can go back to talking about specific coins and what they've been doing over the past couple of weeks in relation to these DeFi craze. Let me share my screen once again. Can you see my screen?
Looks good.
Okay, yeah, my mouse is very slow, so for some reason it definitely seems like I'm getting some.
Yeah, there's definitely a little bit of delay on your end and a little bit of crackling on your mic, just to let you know. I don't know if there's much that can be done about it, but
I
you
think
can definitely, you're hearable.
I think it's just my Wi-Fi. I'll try to speak as eloquently as I can. I also just
Yeah,
wanted
we'll let
to
you know.
go ahead.
Maybe when you start, share watch list which we prepared for the people. So
Yeah, I shared it
because
already.
okay.
Yeah, if somebody can, maybe Gary, if you can share it in the chat as well, so people can kind of go to this watch list and figure out for themselves what's pumping and what's not, and kind of go over specific metrics for these coins. That would be nice as well. But yeah, we opened with that, Max. I think you were not still on the chat or on the stream. So yeah, before we go into specific coins, just one final order of business. Looking here at the social volume for just a few of the coins they have been recently pumping, you can kind of see. So this here, we're looking at the amount of mentions of KNC, Ren, Lend, and Comp over the last 6 months on crypto social media. So this is taking data and messages from over 1,000 different crypto social media channels, and it's plotting it here on a same graph. So you can see that since early January or late December of 2019, the amount of chatter around these coins, and especially in the past 2 or 3 months, and especially since Bitcoin, we're plotting here against the price of Bitcoin, since Bitcoin started to consolidate, the amount of chatter around these coins has kind of just exploded. And currently, we're seeing, even today, we're seeing a massive spike in the amount of mentions of these respective coins on crypto social media. So let's start with Ren. I actually have a Lend here opened up, but since we already kind of touched upon Ren in Kelvin's kind of insights there, let's talk about Ren and why it's pumping. So currently Ren is up to 8.2% on the day, and if we look at the coin's price action over the last 3 months, maybe, there we go. Pardon for the lag here. I'm not sure that I can do much to fix it outside of calling my Wi-Fi company and screaming at them at the moment. So anyway, what you can see here is that the Ren's basically been on a rally for 3 or 4 months now, but especially starting with June 10th. So we're going to talk about this specific pump right here, and then this one, the ongoing rally that's going on at the moment. But before that, really quickly, let's talk about what Ren actually is as a coin. Kelvin just briefly touched upon it, and I want to touch upon it very briefly as well. So essentially, what Ren is trying to do is it's trying to introduce a tokenized, version of Bitcoin to the Ethereum mainnet, but in a decentralized way, in a trustless way. So, obviously, the most popular way to currently kind of introduce Bitcoin to the Ethereum mainnet is WBTC, but the problems with the WBTC is that you have to go through KYC, and you have, the coins are minted from network partners, they're held custodially, so it kind of is antithetical to what the decentralized crypto space is all about. So what Ren is trying to do, and a couple of other projects are trying to do as well, is they're trying to recreate this process in a trustless way, in a decentralized way. And this is where the Ren token comes in place, because facilitating this decentralized process of tokenizing Bitcoin into the Ethereum ecosystem is the Ren virtual machine. And in order to power this Ren virtual machine, people run so-called dark nodes. So dark nodes, essentially what they do is they contribute their computational power and storage capacity in order to enable the tokenization of, at the moment, just Bitcoin to the Ethereum network. And in exchange, they earn a share of all of the volume that is being transacted through Ren virtual machine. So now that we kind of have that very short synopsis in mind, let's look at Ren's price action once again. So the first kind of spike that we see is right here, and especially this spike in particular is very telling. So the previous sort of top for Ren over the last maybe 1 year happened on May 27th. May 27th is when Ren's mainnet finally launched. And it's interesting to see the reaction to the mainnet launch, because it's actually showing that there's definitely been quite a lot of real life network activity happening on Ren's mainnet. So once Ren's mainnet went live here on May 27th, everybody could start running their own dark nodes and starting getting rewarded for running their own dark nodes. The condition to run your own dark node is to put 100,000 Ren to a dark node registry address. And we can definitely see, so this is the historical balance of Ren's dark node registry address. So we found the address and then we've plotted it through our historical balance tool. You can see here when I click on it, you'll be able to see what it looks now, because I wrote this a couple of days ago. But essentially you can see that this specific address, the dark node registry, has been getting a lot of coins being sent to it. Currently around 64 million Ren has been deposited into a dark node registry, meaning a lot of people are kind of applying to run their own dark nodes. This is further sort of supported by the fact that we've seen a major dip in the amount of holders of more than 100,000 Ren, specifically when mainnet launch started. So this is about 150 addresses being removed from the 100,000 plus Ren club over the span of a couple of days, as Ren holders kind of decided, you know what, there's a newfound utility for my Ren tokens. I don't really want to sell them yet. I believe in the project, therefore I'm just going to stake it in order to run my own dark nodes and start getting rewarded from the volumes going through the virtual machine. So this was kind of the first reason, or the first leg of Ren's pump is the mainnet launch. And here, when we look at Ren's token age consumed, or the amount of coins that have been previously dormant and that started suddenly moving once again, we can see a massive spike in token age consumed right at the mainnet launch, which means that long-term holders of Ren, people that have not moved their Ren bags for an extended amount of time, have started moving it once again during the mainnet launch. Now, this is obviously not only in response to the appeal to run your own dark node, because if we scroll a bit down, you'll also be able to see the coin supply on exchanges has kind of started dramatically rising at around the same time, which means that in addition to people sending their coins in order to run their own dark nodes, a lot of people have kind of supposed that Ren is going to pump very high due to the mainnet launch, and have started moving their coins to exchanges in order to sell and take advantage of the rally. Now, this sell pressure might have actually impacted the price in quite a negative way, which you can kind of see that ever since we kind of saw this massive spike in the amount of coins being moved to exchanges, this obvious intent to sell, we've seen Ren's price start declining for a while, until it started breaking out once again. The reason why it broke out, you can read all about it in the insight here. You can go to insights.santiment.net and check out the entire kind of breakdown. It is because Ren has kind of, in the past couple of days and couple of weeks, it's announced a variety of smaller initiatives and projects that, combined have led to, especially given the general market-wide conditions, have led to another breakout. Now, let's see what we can kind of spot, where Ren's on-chain activity tells us the coin is at currently, or what we might suggest that might happen with Ren based on its on-chain and social data right now. So there's a few things that we use at Santiment to try and spot when a correction is incoming for a coin. One of probably the simplest way that we try and figure out whether a coin is poised for a correction is by looking at its social volume. So once again, social volume essentially means we gather messages from over 1,000 different crypto social media channels, and we plot the amount of mentions for any specific coin in our database over their price. So you can kind of see if there have been any correlations with the spike in the amount of mentions of a specific coin and its price action. And if we look at Ren's price action over the last year, which we'll do right now. So yeah, you can definitely see quite a strong correlation at several of Ren's tops between its social mentions and its price action. So especially during the 2019 rallies, these three tops that came one after another, each one of them was kind of earmarked by this growing social volume, as well as a quickly declining social volume, even though the price has tried pushing upwards even more. So essentially, the crowd started to hype the coin. The hype kind of started reaching their peak, and as the crowd started moving away, or just losing interest in the coin's price action, moving on to other things, the price of Ren was not able to sustain another leg upward and started correcting very soon afterwards. You can see this not only at these massive tops in 2019, during the summer of 2019. You can see this on a smaller scale here. So we have this massive boom in Ren social volume during the price hike, and then as the social volume starts to decline, so does the price for Ren as well. Similar thing happened here during, before the Black Thursday dump, and then a very similar thing happened during the mainnet launch. So there is definitely historical precedent to assume that an elevated amount of social volume for Ren can adversely impact the price, especially once it starts reverting back to its normal pre-pump levels. If the price continues or tries to continue to push upward, it might find itself unable to do so without the necessary crowd interest and speculative interest. So at the moment, we see that the Ren social volume is still kind of fairly high. So I would for now say that, given the amount of interest focused and concentrated on the Ren at the moment, I would say that there's enough sort of social support at the very least to provide another leg upward. If we see and when we see this particular spike here that you see at on today's date, when we see it reverting back, this might be a time for Ren to start consolidate or even experience a short-term correction, just from a basic social perspective. Now, there's another additional or another addendum to our social metrics, which we like to talk about quite a bit when trying to figure out where is the top or when a top might be incoming. And this is by consulting with our sentiment metrics. So what I just showed you was basically the amount of mentions alone of Ren over time. So this is just the amount of times that there have been a message containing a word Ren or any of its synonyms on crypto social media. Now, what this doesn't tell you is whether the mood of the crowd is positive or negative, whether these mentions are bullish or in fact bearish and people think that, we're about to dump any minute. What we have tried to do, or the way that we have tried to figure out the sentiment of the crowd, is by developing our own unique sentiment algorithm, which tries to label all of the messages that we collect as either bullish or bearish. The ones that it is unable to determine whether they're bullish or bearish, it leaves on the side, so that it does not overfit the model. So once I'm able to click here and especially go to Ren's Twitter, which is usually where the data is the most accurate because our sentiment algorithm was trained on Twitter's data, and I scroll all the way down here, we can see this chart in particular showing the Ren weighted social sentiment. So essentially, and actually let me zoom in a bit just so you can see it more clearly. So what this specific chart does is it tries to determine whether the average sentiment of towards Ren on crypto social media, oh, I'm missing this stuff, okay, is bullish or bearish. So 0 is ambivalent territory where people are kind of indecisive about the coin. There's equal amount of bullish and bearish sentiment, and these massive spikes upwards are massively or extremely bullish sentiment towards a coin, and these dips below 0 are times when Ren is, the standard or general sentiment towards Ren is negative. Now, currently, we're seeing a fairly bullish or overwhelmingly bullish sentiment towards Ren on crypto social media. Why this might not be the greatest thing in the world for Ren, even though a lot of people might think so, is that we have seen a very similar pattern form around its 2019 tops. So essentially what we're seeing is potentially at least a repeat of the 2019 scenario where there was extremely bullish sentiment towards Ren at each of its tops. And there was very quickly sort of an incoming correction at each of these points where essentially the crowd has kind of hit peak hype and the whales started to dump on the FOMO crowd. So one thing that's kind of optimistic for Ren is that we're actually seeing a slight decline over the past couple of days in the bullishness of Ren related chatter, but it's still fairly high, 1.4% here. Or 1.4 standard deviations from the means, better yet. So in general, Ren social data is kind of on a kind of entering a dangerous territory where we're seeing a lot of mentions of the coin, which, as you can see here, has previously impacted the price in a negative way when it starts to decline, and we're seeing a highly bullish sentiment, which has also adversely impacted the price of the coin in the past. So once we start seeing the social volume for Ren begin to diverge and go, decline into its pre-pump levels, we might see, that might be a very good time to kind of ease off on your Ren accumulation or acquisition at the very least. So that's social volume. Now, one other metric that I wanted to mention is daily active addresses. Very simple, maybe the simplest metric as far as on-chain data is concerned that we currently track. So daily active addresses, what they do is they track the amount of addresses that are interacting with a coin on a daily basis, which means either sending or receiving Ren at any given point in time. So we've definitely seen a massive spike in Ren's daily active addresses ever since the mainnet launch. So this is 500 Ren addresses. I think it's almost like a 2-year high for Ren here. During the mainnet launch, and then obviously we saw a decrease after the mainnet hype started to dissipate. And then once Ren started, posting and announcing all of these minor initiatives with Curve 5 and WBTC Cafe, which is a small app that they've developed, we have once again seen a surge in Ren-related activity. This is obviously not bad in and of itself. I think in general, when there's heightened network activity, this should kind of bode well for the price of the coin as well. Obviously, unless a majority of this activity is people sending Ren to exchanges to sell. In that case, we might, not want to see this sort of explosive growth. Now, one thing that we can notice immediately, just based on previous Ren tops, is a very similar pattern to what we just observed with social volume, is the fact that Ren's daily active addresses tend to spike very intensely and aggressively somewhere around its tops, and then they start to decline or diverge as the price is trying to push another or make another push upward. And once it does that, once it kind of revolves or retraces back to its normal pre-pump levels, it doesn't provide any more fundamental or network support for a price to grow any larger. At the moment, we are not seeing this divergence for Ren just yet. In fact, Ren's network activity has remained very high throughout the past week. So for now, I would say there's definitely enough fundamental support as well to provide another leg up for Ren. It doesn't necessarily have to happen, but just based on the historical trend as well, this might be this should be a good sign for Ren. Once we see the amount of daily active addresses start to diverge like they did in 2019, like they did here, and even here we can see kind of a diverging or a declining DAA trend before the correction. Once we see that sort of divergence between the network activity starting to drop and the amount of or the price trying still to push up, this is the time where we are likely to experience at least a consolidation period, if not a short-term correction. For the moment, this is not happening, but this is definitely something to keep in mind. And finally, let's look at Ren's exchange inflow, or the amount of coins being moved, Ren coins being moved to exchanges. Obviously, a very sort of interesting sign for Ren's price action is the amount of speculative interest in a coin. And we have definitely seen a rising amount of Ren moving to exchanges at previous several tops. Here, we've seen it during the Black Thursday event, and we've seen it before the sort of mainnet dump here as well. So over the last couple of days, there has actually been a sort of a heightened exchange inflow. If we zoom in a bit here, we can see that there's been a massive spike over, what is this? Let's see, come on. I'm trying to, okay, 11 million Ren, so that's about what, 1 million USD. Has been moved to exchanges here before this very kind of short-term correction, indicating once again, and you can see kind of the same thing happened during the mainnet launch as well, as people kind of wanted to take advantage of the price rally, and here before this minor correction as well. So when a lot of coins start moving to known exchange wallets, this can very often indicate a rising sell pressure, and if the coin's bulls are not able to absorb this amount of, this mounting sell wall, it might lead to a short-term correction in price. So this is also something that we want to keep an eye on when looking at what Ren might do next, is essentially the amount of speculative interest towards the Ren coin as expressed through our on-chain metrics. So this is the three very simple sort of metrics that I wanted to highlight at this session. So social volume, when it starts declining after a rise, it might indicate a consolidation period or retraction. Daily active addresses, when pretty much the same thing. When they start to diverge from the prices, the price tries to push another leg upward, but the daily active addresses start to decline. This is also a cause of concern. And exchange inflow, if we see another spike in exchange inflow for Ren over the next couple of days, it might indicate yet another sort of cycle of sell pressure, of additional sell pressure for Ren, which could adversely impact its price as well. Now, before we go any further, I want to give a floor to Maxim, because Max, I think you also wanted to talk a bit about one of the things that we've been developing in-house that might kind of be connected to this and, might let people make their own sort of predictions within the Santiment platform about what might happen with the prices of different coins. So if you want to share your screen and...
No need for screen. Just
okay.
Shortly, I will say what we've developed over the years, the last 2 years at least. It's a set of tools and frameworks and experience how we spot the top. Those who following us know our historical track record on this. And I believe we have here quite specific knowledge. What we are doing now in the background, we are making a decentralized platform where we can give up our forecast or calls for market tops and accelerating growth or like bottoms. And you can get rewarded if you get into the best data intelligence miners. Yeah, let's call it data intelligence miners. Now, if you think it's interesting and you can get some potential skills you want to apply, yeah, just let us know either here in comments or go to our Discord. I think we'll soon be or stay alerted. Yeah, better follow our Discord. This is where we'll most likely announce it. We'll be at some point of time announcing close circle of where we start iterating on the real rewards and market predictions. Yeah? And we will in the process also teach and share things we are like showing now in more like given access to tools and all those things. Yeah, just short teaser.
Thanks, Max.
That's it.
I'm just looking at the coins. At the chat and the coins that they are suggesting. There's a request to look at KNC as well. So maybe, could you please repeat in writing how we can use social volume to predict price action? Yes, indeed. We actually have this very article written. If you go to Insights and you scroll here, you will be able to find, let's see where it is. Max, where is your article? There it is. So you go to insights.santiment.net and you scroll to, actually, I'll just share it in chat. Spotting ETH price stops using behavior and volume analyses. So this is essentially a combination of the two things that I just mentioned. So both the social volume and the on-chain volume or daily active addresses, where Max talks about how you can spot when a healthy part of the volume of the social and daily active addresses is rising, and then when the not healthy part begins as the sort of the volume start to diverge as the price starts pushing upward or continues to push upward. Here is a link to that. There you go. Okay, so please look at KNC. All right, we don't have much time left. I think, yeah, it's already 16:52 at my end. So we've been alive for about 50 minutes. But let's look at KNC. So I wrote about KNC maybe 2 weeks ago. I wrote about why it's pumping and what might be happening next with it. It's since kind of gone into a consolidation mode of its own. But let's look at some of its social and on-chain data and figure out what might be happening with it now. So let's start with just daily active addresses and figure out what that looks like for KNC. Yeah, okay. So not a great sign. If what I've been talking about just recently for Ren can be applied to KNC, this sort of divergence is not great for its long-term or even mid-term price action. So we saw this massive spike in KNC's daily active addresses right around the first stop, and then as the price started or attempted another push upward, about $1.3, the daily active addresses or the actual network activity kind of, retraced back to its pre-pump level. So let's try and look at the last year and see what we can deduce. I mean, once again, I'm not making things up. This is, it's
same pattern.
Same pattern, time and time again. I haven't even prepared this. It's just there. So the same thing we see here during Ren's three tops, obviously before the general market corrections because of the Black Thursday dump. But we saw this massive spike in daily active addresses, and then there has been like a retraction and another try to push upwards, but the general daily active address activity has started to decline, and then even more aggressively here. So massive spike in daily active addresses during the top, a consolidation period into a declining on-chain activity, and then a general sort of correction ensued. So for now, I mean, in general, KNC's network activity is still fairly high comparatively, right? But the trend is definitely going south. Let's look at its social volume as well. I haven't really seen KNC being talked about all that much in the past couple of days, but maybe I'm wrong. Let's look at its social volume as soon as it loads. Yeah, okay. So once again, we yeah, like you can't really say much else than just look at the charts. So a huge spike in social volume for KNC around the first stop, and then as the crowd kind of loses its interest or goes into other coins, the price action is no longer able to sustain itself. We saw a relatively high spike in the social volume right here around the top, pretty much on the exact top here. And then a declining social volume into a declining price action. Similar thing that we've seen here. So the KNC social volume spiked very aggressively right around the first stop, and since then it's kind of been losing power. Although we have seen this. Okay, let me zoom in a bit and let's see what's been going on. Okay, we've seen the second wave of interest in KNC right here. So, if this kind of is able to continue over the weekend, and if we see rising network activity as well, there might be a support for another leg up. But in general, it seems like the trend for KNC has been kind of in a decline over the past couple of days, and I don't think network activity over the weekend usually dips for a lot of altcoins, so I wouldn't be holding my breath there. Let's look at exchange inflow and see if there have been any patterns for KNC as well. Oh, look at that. Okay. So we see a spike in 2.85 million KNC. That's what? That's about $30 million. Right around the first stop for Kyber Networks coin. So essentially, $30 million worth of KNC have been moved to known exchange wallets. I would assume a lot of them have been moved to sell and take advantage of this rally. And even almost immediately, we saw a first sort of correction for the coin as the bulls were not able to absorb that much sell pressure. Like 30 million for a mid-cap coin can crash a market in an instant. So let's see if there have been similar trends for KNC in the past. Let's look at the last year. Yep, same thing. So we saw a spike here, actually not at the very top. We saw a smaller spike at the top and then another spike which kind of cemented the rally here. And we saw a similar spike in exchange inflow during KNC's first stop here before the correction as well. Once again, yeah, go ahead, Brian.
Maybe I can share my screen for a minute because I have a pretty good insight about KNC regarding their MVRV long short diff on our Sandsheets template for it.
Sure. Let me just stop sharing my screen, and you can take over.
All right. So what we're looking at here is a series of about 10 different key projects that we typically look at for MVRV long short diff and have gotten a large amount of interest over the past few months. What we're looking at here in purple is KNC's long short diff. What this measures is the average percentage return that a combination between long holders and more recent holders are returning in terms of their overall percentages. So right here, highlighted in blue with a little bit of a thicker line, is Bitcoin, showing that over the past 3 months, Bitcoin's long short return value is at about 4.6%. But if we go way up here, the very top of this, leading the way of these 10 projects, is KNC, where their average return for these long and short holders is a whopping 61%. And this is pretty notable because most projects are going to hover around 0% in the long run. And most altcoins, obviously, after the Black Thursday crash, have recovered quite nicely and are in the green for these long short diff holders. But KNC is higher than almost every one, even if I were to plot 100 or 1,000 of these altcoins all on one, which would get way too messy. KNC is one of the easily in the top 5% of these. And I find this to be a big red flag, something that our traders should typically look out for when they're seeing any project cross about the 50% mark or even 25% mark. That's generally a sign that too many traders of an asset are profiting, therefore getting a bit greedy. They might be FOMOing into it at too high of a rate, and we want to wait for something to look a little more like this, where we see with Gollum, where it's still in the red and one of the few that's in the red still during this period of time. So if anyone wants this template, feel free to let us know in the comments on the YouTube channel or in Twitter afterwards. How are we on time, guys? I have a few other things prepared.
I think we're over time already. I think we're gonna need to call it quits here. Maybe let's see if there are any additional questions that we might want to get to before we end, and then we can continue in general. I think on Discord as well. Okay, to do the Ren fall in July was due to project member selling. Oh, okay. The fundamentals can change. The masternodes now coming online would affect the daily active. They would, in fact, and this is, this is why, for example, when you look at Ren, let me share my screen once again, so everybody can see. Yeah, so when I'm looking at Ren's price action and daily active addresses, yeah, here it's definitely at least part of the activity has been just as you mentioned, certain addresses becoming live essentially. But you can also see if you look at holder distribution. So here we can look at the amount of addresses holding Ren, certain amounts of Ren, and how their collective balances have changed over time. And if we only select, I think, holders of more than 100,000 Ren, let's see. Yeah, so this is clearly due to the mainnet launch and the dark node interest. So the amount of addresses holding between 100,000 and 1 million Ren has started dropping severely here. It's actually picked up pace once again here as people have started, again accumulating the coins after the dark nodes went live. And the smaller guys between 10,000 and 100,000 haven't really dipped all that much, and in fact are accumulating still. So in general, I mean, the long term, or sorry, the larger holders for Ren they've been on a accumulation binge for a while. The smaller guys have been accumulating all the way into the rally, and even the larger people or larger holders have, on the average, I think, been growing their bags until at least here, where they've, it's not that they've sold, it's just that they've kind of moved their Ren into a different, an additional use case that they've discovered. I mean, in general, this is always something that you want to see in projects. I honestly don't see too many projects have this sort of organic actual network use case, and their coins being used for a specific purpose. Like I see this for maybe basic attention token, sometimes for MKR around the governance events, but for a lot of coins, their on-chain activity is still like 90% speculative. So these types of moves and the movement on-chain around actual real life project milestones is always encouraging to see. So yeah, in general, I think Ren can do very interesting things for the ecosystem and for the DeFi space in particular. Whether it's going to continue growing in the short term, I think we've already touched upon that. So yeah, guys, thank you all for joining the stream. Thank you all for listening. We are going to continue the discussion. I think both Brian and I have a few other things that we wanted to share here. I wanted to talk about Lend AAV as well. If you're interested, you can also check out my latest article on Lend. It's quite long and it goes into extreme detail into exactly how high I think Lend can go based on our on-chain and social data. So go to insights.santiment.net, and I think it's going to be the first article there. Let me see. Insights.santiment.net. It should be, and I'll just link to it in chat as well. Yeah, it's the first one here, just released. Let me share it here as well. Okay. Yeah, so thank you all for joining us. I know an hour-long session can be quite taxing, so we're going to continue talking about this on our Discord. If you're interested, there's a link to our Discord in the description. Ask us anything that you want, any specific coins. We talk about this stuff, as I mentioned, every day. Until next week, I would like to thank Brian and Kelvin and Max for joining me and kind of sharing their insights on the market as well. I would like to thank all of you that are watching this live, as well as all of you that will be watching this after the fact and after we share it on all of our social media channels as well. And until next week, thank you all and talk to you soon.
Thanks. Thank you, everyone. Yeah. Bye.
Thanks.